It was a quiet morning when I drove up to my bridge. The sun was just rising, painting the water in shades of gold and turquoise. But my heart froze before my eyes could even take it all in. Pieces of wood floated in the water, twisted and broken. The bridge that had connected my property to the outside world, the only road I owned to reach their neighborhood, was gone. Torn down. Gone. And yet the culprits had no idea it was my bridge. I stood there, gripping the steering wheel, every nerve screaming. My bridge wasn't just wood and gravel, it was my lifeline. My connection to everything outside, to my friends, my family, my neighbors, my livelihood, and now it lay in ruins, as if someone had decided that my world didn't matter. The first thought that hit me wasn't anger. It was disbelief. How could someone tear down a bridge without knowing who it belonged to? How could they not see the signs, the warnings, the obvious ownership? But then came the second thought, sharper, colder, revenge, justice, or at least making them understand that you don't mess with what's mine. I stepped out of my truck, the gravel crunching under my boots. The smell of wet wood and river water hit my senses. A crane stood nearby, and men in orange safety vests moved hurriedly, oblivious to me, oblivious to the fact that they had just crossed a line. I walked closer, inspecting the broken sections. On the left side, the wooden planks had collapsed into the turquoise water, splintered and jagged. On the right, the supports gave way, leaving an impossible gap. In the middle, some law enforcement vehicles, police cars, and a single SUV were parked. Men in dark clothing were inspecting the area, talking quietly. But none of them had the faintest clue whose bridge this was. And there I stood, alone, watching, waiting. "You can't just do this," I muttered under my breath. "You can't just tear down what's mine." No one heard me. Of course they didn't, that's the point. They didn't know. I leaned against what remained of the intact gravel section and let my mind drift back. I remembered the day I built this bridge. Not professionally, not with a contractor, but with my own hands, sweat, and effort. Every stone, every wooden plank, every nail had been a part of me. I had crossed this bridge thousands of times. On rainy nights, snowy mornings during golden sunsets. Each crossing had its own memory. And now those memories were floating in the water along with the splintered wood. And then I saw her, my neighbor across the broken gap. She had blonde hair, a bright red suit, and an expression of complete shock. I realized she wasn't part of this destruction, but she was close enough to feel the tension, to see what had happened, and her eyes locked with mine for a split second. That moment told me something. The neighborhood had no idea what they were dealing with. I didn't wait. I walked down the path toward the workers, the police, the chaos. Every step was measure. Every step carried the weight of someone who had been wronged but wasn't, about to explode without purpose. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm but firm. "This bridge belongs to me." Heads turned. There were confused looks, some hesitant nods, but no one moved the way I expected. Some of the workers laughed, thinking I was joking. The police officer in the dark blue uniform stepped closer, trying to assert authority. "Sir, this is public property," he said. "You can't claim ownership." I interrupted, pointing to the faded metal sign still hanging on the intact section. "Private property." He glanced at it and then back at me, a flicker of realization crossing his face. But the laughter and confusion among the workers hadn't stopped. "Do you know what you just did?" I asked, my voice rising now. "You destroyed someone's property. The only road that connects my land to the outside world." The red-suited woman now standing behind me looked alarmed. She was a mediator, I guessed. But I didn't have time for mediators. I had to make them understand. I stepped back, taking a deep breath. I had to plan my next move. This wasn't just about confronting them anymore. It was about reclaiming control, showing them the consequences of ignorance. I looked at the broken bridge once more. My bridge was more than wood, gravel, and water. It was a symbol. And symbols demand respect. I reached for my phone and started calling a few trusted friends. People who could help me navigate this mess. People who could remind the neighborhood that I was not someone to be trifled with. And that's when it hit me. This was bigger than just a bridge. This was about recognition, respect, and standing my ground. And if they thought they could get away with it, they were dead wrong. You've ever had someone cross the line, destroy what's yours, or underestimate you? Stay tuned. The story is just beginning. In the next part, you'll see how I turned disbelief into action and how one man's bridge becomes the line that cannot be crossed. I had stood on the edge of that broken bridge long enough to feel the weight of every splintered plank beneath my boots. The disbelief had shifted into a quiet, simmering fury. This wasn't just about a road anymore. It was about respect, about boundaries, about letting the world know that no one, and I mean no one, destroys what's mine without consequences. I glanced at the workers, and the law enforcement standing on the intact gravel section. They looked like a swarm of ants in my eyes, busy but clueless. I clenched my fists, feeling the surge of determination that had been building since the moment. I saw the destruction. Every step I took toward the middle of the bridge felt like stepping into a battlefield. This was the moment where everything would change. I stepped forward, my boots crunching on the gravel, dust rising around me. "Listen carefully," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "This bridge belongs to me. You all need to back off until I decide what happens next." The police officer in the dark blue uniform frowned. "Sir, we are just here to ensure safety. You can't just—" "I don't want your lectures. I want my bridge respected," I interrupted, pointing at the splintered sections. "Every plank, every nail, it's mine, and you destroyed it." A few workers laughed nervously, shifting their weight from foot to foot. I could see the realization dawning slowly on some faces, the fear creeping in like a cold wind. That's when I knew my words had landed. The woman in red, standing a few steps behind me, raised her hand. We didn't know. Nobody knew. It was supposed to be a repair," she said, her voice shaky. "Repair?" I scoffed. "Repair what?" "You tore it down!" The sun reflected off the water, casting a bright glare on the broken wood. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer, making the scene feel more surreal, more tense. I retreated a few steps, letting the tension simmer in the air. I needed a plan. This wasn't just about confrontation, it was about strategy. I called a few close friends, people I trusted. Within minutes, a small team assembled. Not for violence, not for chaos, but for precision. We needed to rebuild, secure the area, and make it absolutely clear that my bridge was not to be trifled with again. As we discussed plans, I looked at the debris floating in the turquoise water. Each plank, each twisted piece of wood told a story of carelessness, ignorance, and disrespect. And I promised myself no one would ever dare do this again. I wasn't alone in noticing the tension building. One of the workers, a tall man in an orange vest, stepped forward. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he said, his tone challenging. I smiled coldly. "I do, and you're—" About to find out exactly what happens when someone messes with my property. Some of the men laughed nervously, shifting their weight from one foot to another. Others stepped back, realizing that I wasn't bluffing. My team had arrived quietly, and I could see the surprise in their eyes. They hadn't expected reinforcements, hadn't expected me to take control so swiftly. The woman in red stayed close, her eyes wide with concern. I could feel her unease, but she also understood. I was not here to negotiate. I was here to assert dominance. We moved closer to the broken sections. My team began assessing the damage, marking weak points and preparing tools. The workers and police officers watched, unsure whether to intervene. One of the cranes swung slightly, groaning under the weight. A worker shouted something, and I caught the edge of panic in his voice. That's when I knew they were scared. They weren't used to someone standing firm, someone refusing to back down. I walked across the intact gravel section, every step deliberate. "This bridge is mine," I said aloud so everyone could hear. "And if anyone tries to cross it again without permission, they'll regret it." The police officer raised an eyebrow, but I could tell even he understood. I wasn't bluffing. The control had shifted subtly but unmistakably. I turned to the woman in red. "You need to help me. The neighborhood must know that this bridge is private. That my rules apply here," I said, my voice firm. She hesitated. I don't want trouble," she admitted. "Then help me prevent it," I said, my tone softening just enough to be persuasive. "We're not looking for conflict. We're looking for respect. Just respect." Her eyes flicked to the workers, then back at me. Slowly, she nodded. "All right, I'll help." And that was all I needed. The tides had shifted. What started as disbelief and anger was turning into control, into power, into the ability to enforce the rules that everyone had ignored. My team and I began clearing debris and setting temporary barricades. Every movement was calculated, every placement intentional. The broken sections were not just obstacles, they were statements. A warning. I looked at the turquoise water below, glinting under the late morning sun. Calm, beautiful. Deceptive. It reminded me that appearances could be misleading. The bridge may have looked destroyed. But the real power, the real control was mine. Workers murmured among themselves, and I could hear bits of conversation, uncertainty, fear, even respect. They hadn't anticipated someone taking swift, decisive action. That's when I smiled. They were learning, slowly but surely, that actions have consequences. As afternoon approached, I called my team together. "We make our move at sunset," I said. "Everything must be ready. Every plank, every barricade, every sign of ownership must be clear." The sun cast long shadows over the broken bridge, turning splintered wood into jagged silhouettes. My team worked quietly, efficiently, without a word wasted. And there I stood, looking at the broken turquoise water below, feeling a surge of anticipation. This wasn't just a bridge. This was a message. A lesson, a declaration. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or crossed, imagine what it feels like to take control. The next part will reveal how I turn the tide completely, how the neighborhood learns that crossing the wrong person has consequences, and how one broken bridge becomes a battleground for respect. The sun hung low over the turquoise water, casting long shadows across the shattered planks of my bridge. Every splinter seemed to glint with defiance, as if daring me to give up. But giving up wasn't an option. Not now, not ever. The neighborhood thought they could erase my bridge without consequence, without understanding who owned it. They were wrong. Dead wrong! And I was about to make sure they knew exactly why you don't mess with what's mine. I stepped forward, feeling the gravel crunch under my boots. The water shimmered below, calm yet merciless, reflecting the tension in the air. Every eye was on me. Workers, police, and the woman in red who had now fully aligned with me. The stage was set. This wasn't just a bridge. This was a battlefield of respect, and the war was about to begin. I approached the broken gap, where the collapsed wooden planks had formed jagged edges into the turquoise water. The workers stood tensely, unsure whether to continue their attempts to fix the bridge or retreat. I raised my hand and spoke loudly, my voice echoing over the valley. "Everyone stop! This is my bridge, and no one is crossing until I say so." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some of the men laughed nervously, but others froze. They could see the determination in my eyes, the unyielding firmness in my stance. "You don't understand," one of the construction workers said, stepping forward. "We're just doing what we were told." "We didn't mean to—" I cut him off. "It doesn't matter what you were told. This is my property, and it's clear who has authority here." Even the police officer who had tried to mediate earlier stepped back slightly. He realized that I wasn't asking. I wasn't negotiating. I was asserting ownership, and the power shift was undeniable. I turned to my team. "Let's make this unmistakable. Every piece of debris, every sign, every barricade, we make it clear this bridge belongs to me." We began placing large, sturdy signs along the gravel section. "Private property, bridge owned by my name." We reinforced the broken sections with temporary wooden barriers and ropes, marking the area as off-limits. Every movement was deliberate, every detail calculated. The workers whispered among themselves. Some stepped back, realizing they had been reckless. Others tried to ignore us, but I could see the tension in their shoulders, the hesitation in their eyes. They hadn't expected me to act this decisively. The woman in red moved closer to me. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded. "I don't just want my bridge back. I want respect. I want them to understand that actions have consequences." I walked to the edge of the intact gravel section, looking down at the jagged planks and the turquoise water below. Memories of every crossing, every late-night walk, every rainy day flooded my mind. "You see this?" I said, turning to the crowd. "This isn't just wood. This isn't just gravel. This is my life. Every step I've taken on this bridge matters. And if you think you can just destroy it without consequence, you're wrong." A hush fell over the area. Even the workers who had tried to mock me moments ago were silent. The woman in red, standing slightly behind me, held my gaze. I could feel her support, a silent acknowledgement that I was right. Then, for the first time, I saw it, the realization in their eyes. The neighborhood, the workers, the police, they understood. I signaled to my team to begin repairs, but this wasn't just any repair. This was a restoration that would leave no doubt. The bridge was mine. Every plank was reinforced, every support made stronger, every gap closed. The workers watched, some reluctantly assisting, some just observing. And with each plank we placed, with each rope we tied, the power dynamic shifted further. The bridge wasn't just a physical structure anymore, it was a symbol of authority, of control, of respect earned and enforced. The woman in red finally spoke. "They'll remember this. They'll never ignore you again." I smiled faintly. "Exactly. That's the point." Just as we finished securing the last section, one of the taller men from the workers' group stepped forward, a challenge in his eyes. "You think you can just take over? This isn't your place." I walked directly to him, closing the distance. My tone was calm but deadly serious. "It is my place. It always was. And now you all know it. Try to cross it again, and there will be consequences. I won't warn you twice." He froze. The other workers shifted uneasily behind him. The police officer adjusted his stance but didn't intervene. Everyone understood that I had claimed control, and there was no reversing it. I stood on the restored bridge, looking out over the turquoise water, the green valley, and the neighborhood beyond. A calm sense of victory washed over me, not just for reclaiming my property, but for asserting myself. The woman in red approached. "You did it," she said quietly. "You made them understand." "Yes," I replied. "They finally understand that some lines aren't to be crossed. Respect is not given, it's earned." The sun dipped lower, casting golden light over the valley. Shadows stretched across the bridge, highlighting every plank, every rope, every sign we had placed. My bridge wasn't just repaired, it was a monument to standing your ground, to never letting anyone trample what is yours. If you've ever been crossed, ignored, or underestimated, remember this. Taking control is not just about anger, it's about clarity, strategy, and determination. Stand your ground. Protect what matters. Make sure the world knows where the line is. Because some bridges aren't just paths. Over water, they're symbols of your strength, your boundaries, and your resolve. And never forget, respect isn't optional. It's mandatory. I never expected peace to come quietly. Even after reclaiming my bridge, a strange tension lingered in the air, thick as the morning fog rising off the turquoise water. It was a calm that whispered warnings, a reminder that respect is fragile, and even when enforced, it must be maintained. I stood at the edge of my bridge, watching the neighborhood beyond. The sun had barely begun its climb, reflecting gold across the broken but rebuilt planks. The chaos from the previous day seemed like a distant memory, yet I could still feel it in my chest. Every heartbeat a pulse of vigilance. The question that haunted me now was simple. Had they truly learned their lesson? Or would ignorance, arrogance, and carelessness return to haunt me again? The morning was eerily quick except for the gentle rustle of leaves and distant crows calling overhead. I saw the workers from before, now standing at the edge of the neighborhood, watching the bridge from afar. Their earlier bravado had vanished, replaced by cautious hesitation. I walked slowly across my bridge, each step deliberate, listening to the crunch of gravel beneath my boots. It felt different now, stronger, controlled, every plank, rope, and barricade a testament to what had been reclaimed. The woman in red approached, her heels clicking softly against the gravel. "You know," she said, her voice low, "it's like the whole neighborhood is holding its breath. No one dares come near." I smiled faintly. "Good. Let them understand that crossing boundaries has consequences. That respect isn't optional, it's mandatory." She nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon. "But do you think they'll ever actually change? Or is this just temporary?" I stopped mid-step and looked at her, meeting her gaze firmly. "They'll remember this. Long after the bridge was rebuilt, the memory of what they did and what I did will remain. That's the power of boundaries." Just as I was about to continue inspecting the bridge, a figure approached from the far end. It was one of the younger workers from the previous days, someone I had initially seen as defiant. He hesitated, then spoke, his voice quieter than before. "Sir, I think we underestimated you. I didn't know it was your bridge. I just want to apologize." I raised an eyebrow, sizing him up. Was this genuine remorse or fear masquerading as apology? "Go on," I said cautiously. "I want to help," he continued, voice shaking slightly. I know I shouldn't have been part of tearing it down. If you'll allow me, I'd like to assist in making sure this bridge is never destroyed again. I studied him for a long moment. There was sincerity in his eyes, a spark of willingness to do better. I finally nodded. All right, but know this. Respect is earned. One mistake and we're back to square one. He exhaled, a mixture of relief and determination. Understood. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. One ally could make a difference. And it also showed me that even those who start on the wrong side can choose to do the right thing. Over the next several hours, we worked together. The young worker and I went plank by plank, checking the integrity of every section, ensuring every rope was tight, every barricade unshakable. The turquoise water reflected our efforts, calm and serene, yet carrying the memory of chaos beneath. The neighborhood residents began to peek from their homes. Some waved hesitantly, others kept their distance. The message had reached them. The bridge was mine, and it was protected, not with anger but with vigilance. The woman in red stayed close, assisting where she could. You're changing the neighborhood's mindset without even raising your voice, she said quietly. I shook my head. It's not about changing minds. It's about showing consequences. Respect is the language everyone understands, and I intend to make it perfectly clear. Even the police officer who had tried to mediate before nodded, silently from the distance, clearly acknowledging that my approach had been effective. Just as the afternoon sun began its descent, a delivery truck from the neighborhood tried to cross near the broken gap. I spotted it immediately. My heart pounded. Would they test me again? I walked to the edge and raised my hand. The truck halted instantly, driver peering anxiously through the window. This bridge is private, I called out, voice firm but controlled. No one crosses without permission. The driver nodded quickly, shifting into reverse. I watched as the truck disappeared down the main road, leaving a trail of dust behind. My bridge remained untouched, my authority confirmed. It was a subtle victory, but an important one. Even the smallest test reinforced the boundaries I had set. Respect, I realized, was not just about reclaiming what's yours, it's about maintaining it in the face of those who might challenge it. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat on the edge of my bridge, legs dangling over the turquoise water. The wind carried the scent of the forest and river, and I felt a strange sense of calm. I thought about the bridge, about the chaos, about the lessons learned. Power and respect were intertwined. Authority without wisdom could lead to destruction, and confrontation without strategy could spiral out of control. I had learned to balance both. The bridge wasn't just a structure anymore. It was a symbol, a representation of vigilance, determination, and the necessity of boundaries. And the people who had once laughed, ignored, or underestimated me now understood that some lines are never to be crossed. The woman in red joined me, holding a cup of coffee. You've changed everything here, she said softly. Even the kids playing near the water are cautious now. I chuckled lightly. Good, that's exactly what needed to happen. Awareness, respect, and understanding, they all start somewhere. She looked at me thoughtfully. Do you ever worry someone will try again? I smiled faintly. Of course, but now I know I can handle it. The bridge isn't just about crossing water. It's about sending a message that respect has consequences, and I will make sure that message is never forgotten. Over the next few days, I noticed changes in the neighborhood. Residents began leaving notes of apology, some even offering assistance with maintenance. Children waved from the sidewalks cautiously, learning the boundaries I had set. The workers who had initially destroyed the bridge now visited, helping with repairs and ensuring the barricades remained intact. Even the police began recognizing my ownership in an official capacity, marking the bridge clearly with signs and warning notices. Every interaction reinforced a